from the south.
Off
from
of
the north.
Opportunity Drive.
From Opportunity Drive.
Just to be clear, Chris, who's involved in the utility negotiation? Jason, are you involved?
I will be, Jeff Thompson. We have not had any discussions with them. We're still pulling that together.
Matt's had a couple conversations with those guys, just as flags of these are things we need to make sure we talk about.
Last
And
one
pull
with
it
Jason, yeah, last one with Jason, they haven't been authorized to start activating those conversations for a bid package
That's what
to then go out. That's still in, they're waiting for the approval to go.
While he's doing that, part of that complexity is they originally went to them with a 7-line proposal, so that amount of energy is
Yeah, significant. That's one of those complexities that we gotta get.
It's how do you land the message of when they originally went and got the rates, it was for 7 lines.
Good morning. So we're talking about service, I mean, to flavor. Can you spare a few minutes and join? Please, send you an invite.
주차장이지? 400명. 인력 트랜스포가 요게
No, when I spoke with Jason while you're getting him on the call, when they originally went out, this was a much larger campus. It was kind of a whole shebang. And it's a matter of how do you then walk that to what this design is currently and still maintain your best price that you're gonna get from folks. But I'll wait till Jason gets on, we can just talk through that.
Yeah, but don't we want the whole shebang or no? That's not right.
Well, the whole shebang comes with some hooks in it, right? Like you have to actually build out, there's some commitments like on Jayhawk that we've committed to that over the life of that campus, we're gonna grow over a certain finite time. And if not, they claw that back, right?
Utility is gonna need to put in some infrastructure scale to support
Correct.
either 2, 4, 7, whatever, 2 buildings.
Right. But I'm just saying the only skeptical person is Helen in that, so why would we not go?
이게
Well,
생산동이고 이게 저기는 오피스.
To some degree, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And so what we're trying to do is I'm trying to walk through and we'll get Jason on and talk through kind of how we've been thinking about what those asks are. Because those asks they're commercial in terms of the rate that you pay for electricity.
Yeah.
But there's also going to be a significant ask if there wasn't Jayhawk around their infrastructure that they're going to have to install.
Yes.
So the utility is going to be very uninterested to put in infrastructure to serve 7 lines that then doesn't get utilized, especially with redundancy and other items.
Well, yeah, over the next 10 years, we will definitely have something.
Right, so we're trying to piece that back, and I think that's what Jason will say when we get on there, is how do we show the full potential of where we're going, build those incentives over 10 years, but not overcommit ourselves to something that we're gonna have to come back to.
Absolutely. What we can't walk back is the sheet that showed this was the incentives, right?
Right, so that I don't have visibility to that.
He does.
Sure. So what we've talked in general is that, as Kate mentioned, electrically, we're gonna protect for services from the south and inside the scope of this project.
Yeah.
And then when we met back in December, I think Michael and I threw in like a $10 or $12 million placeholder just for other infrastructure that we were gonna have to have utilities accomplish.
Yeah. So, just take a second, let me just check this.
Jonathan, we added some money for that from the December or 2 weeks ago on the electrical
Yeah, I
infrastructure.
reduced it to that 6.65
I'm gonna
million.
talk about how we
Jason,
got.
are you there?
뭐야? 10에서 12밀리언은
Jason Lewis.
He's not.
윌슨 루이스? 닭가슴살 12월에 했던 거야.
Hello, Jason's on.
Yeah, okay, all right, very good, thanks.
You bet.
All right, so we're talking about do we go right to the electrical piece? Sure. So we get Jason's.
Okay, so I guess the state, Tony, just so we review, is that we're gonna have to go through a fairly rigorous RFP to multiple providers in South Dakota for all the things you know, right?
Yeah.
And due to that, we have to make some assumptions that of how we build capital into the flavor project.
Yeah.
Right? So anytime you connect a building to the utility, you're responsible for the lines on your property, right? So the team has done a nice job with this. These are the assumed utility connection points. That's based off the best information we have for electrical at this point.
Yeah.
However, if you remember in Jayhawk, Evergy built a new substation.
Yeah.
They brought 2 new lines to the campus. They did all that. That had a significant capital cost that they put in.
That they put in, yeah.
That they put into the pot, right?
That's their contribution.
There you go.
Yeah.
We don't know what the utility companies are going to be willing to do in this because the player's not chosen, the market is different. So what we are protecting within the flavor capital project right now, a value of around $6 million. We came with that number based off of what was actually invested in Jayhawk. So when you look at what Evergy put in to build their substations and bring the lines, plus what Kansas Gas did to upgrade their line to bring natural gas to that site, it comes into that neighborhood of around $6 million.
Yeah, I mean, that's logical.
So we're just using that model because we really don't know, and we think $10 to $12 million is probably too high.
But the 6 million would be enough to do this first, this whole 7-line thing, right?
Right. Those are dollars that you wouldn't see on our campus that would need to get spent to get the utility to these tie points.
I get it.
With the capacity that we're looking for. And where I would recommend in that, and we need to work with Jason on the negotiations, is that for 2 lines that we don't demand a redundant feed for 2 lines. That we talk about how we grow into that as we get to 4 and others, right? Because it's just, we have a lot of facilities today that have this production capacity. They don't have a redundant system to them. It's something we need to work through in that because we have to balance how much are they going to charge us in the rate. We're trying to get an optimum rate without throwing too much stuff on there that we don't need. Because ultimately, the way the utility recovers this is through their rate back at us.
Now, talk a little bit about the Xcel Energy substation.
I'll speak what I know and believe, but my understanding is the development that this building is going in, originally Xcel Energy provided some sort of installation that was part of them building out this industrial park. Yeah. Right. That service is in the southeast of the development, and we would need to get a connection from there up to our facility, which isn't very far. It's a couple miles. The concern is, and what's been raised is Burns McDonnell does a lot of work on the utility side in the same region. Yeah. And the concern is does Xcel actually have the capacity on their transmission lines and their distribution network to provide us the services that we need? If the answer to that is no, then that utility is staring at a very significant investment in either transmission or substation capabilities that we have to figure out the commercial terms of.
Well, there's a time component to that as well.
It's also a very long time component. It's about 2 years.
So here's what, when I met with their senior leaders in the Burns and Mac office in Bloomington, they had a song and then they were dancing, and it looked very good, that they were ready to go. But I did tell them that we're going to bid this out. And they said, yeah, we're very confident. You can bid whatever you want to. Jason, were you on the call there?
Yeah, we actually met them face to face, and yeah, they were very engaged with assisting us in our needs.
Yeah, so I think we need to resurface those names. John is one of them, because I know he reached out to Demetrius, he reached out to the powers to be, right? So my assumption is whatever they need to provide to get there. So the question I have, basic one, Jason, is shouldn't we assume whoever's bidding will bring all of that stuff to the property?
Absolutely.
We're looking at it 10 years out, right?
Absolutely, and I know Chris and I have had some sidebars, and that's where I'm a big proponent of. We're going in fully loaded. This is what we're looking over our phased-in approach,
right?
At our schedule. And this is what we're going to need. This is a one shot in my mind to do this RFP. Could we do it again in the future? Possibly, but I don't think we can count on it. It's an anomaly in the regulated markets. I'm going to go in as much ammo. Yeah.
That's what was unique about South Dakota, that you can go do that, which we've already started the paperwork for us to be able to be qualified to do that, which was last year. Okay, we did that. So where do we go from here? Next steps, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, next steps, I know I have had, our sidebar comments, conversations with Jeff as well. I don't, is he on the call? Because we're gonna have to be.
They're somewhere in Atlanta doing
Oh, no problem, no problem. I mean, we're gonna have to be tied to hip. He's our direct line contact, help the state to become a very influential partner on this as well with everyone, right? We wanna leverage every partner that's gonna be in the RFP process. Again, my preference is going in at as our future state volume, not just the current phase, as we did with Jayhawk going into the fully load. What's it going to look like, right, to help negotiate our future needs? When we get that, we're comfortable with that, then we got to work together with Chris and our Burns and Mac partners in developing what do we want completely out of the RFP? What are the questions that Jason and Jeff will not know to ask without everyone's expertise? When we did this initial, quote to understand what rates would look like, we were going off of estimated volumes and such, and it was stated we were looking for redundant feeds, but there was nothing in black and white coming back that I can recall saying, hey, this is what we're going to do for you with redundant feeds. We did get rates, but of course that was a few years ago now, or a couple of years ago anyways. So we'll have to revisit that.
Yeah, so we do have to keep that in mind. That sheet was filled out with Jason, Lee, and you, right? That's
correct. Yep.
And
DJ.
Yeah. So I think that the 3-4 of you need to gather to make sure, at least reconcile what you had, so that we're very clear. And then we need to come together saying, okay, what does that look like now? The volumes, because there was a volume assumption in that assumption there.
And I would recommend, and Jason and I spoke, I think similar to how we're building the building, we talk about phase 1 and phase 2, but a 7-line facility is going to be very difficult for us to accurately predict the demand in the future.
I think we had to take enough of a swag at it. I think we're going to get a different rate for 7 lines than we would on 2 and 4. And I'm not sure we're ready to share with the world that we've got these phases yet. Remember, we're not signing up for anything. We're just doing an RFP, right?
Sure. Right. Yep. And again, our goal is still, I assume, Tony, we're looking to lock down as much of that rate as we can over 15 years. Get all the components we need for redundancy and any other add-ons that are beyond our rate scope.
Yep. We'd pay close attention to the penalties if we don't do this.
Yeah.
And that page needs to shrink down to like 1 or 2 things.
Yeah. More than likely, the outcome, they're going to require us to some volume levels, and then we'll have to have discussions. If they want to put pen to paper on volume, that becomes a different conversation. But until then, I think we continue pressing the overall scope. Chris, I'm sorry I jumped over you.
No, you're fine. I just was going to ask you to remind us how that worked in Jayhawk. My recollection for Evergy is that there's some sort of clawback in there that if you don't hit these volumes over a certain amount of time, the rate will be adjusted or the rebates are reduced that we're getting.
Yeah, and that was specific in the EDR portion. This is going to be a little bit different because it's not that I recall it's a specific documented language like an EDR with like an Excel or another provider.
Which in some respects makes this a bit more challenging because that language in the provider and Jayhawk was already kind of known, and here's the rules of the road and here's how you play the game. We're going to have to craft a very good RFP to build all those things into it so we go to these providers and get these answers.
I assume I have transparent. I have zero experience doing RFPs for regulated markets. This is kind of uncharted for me. But I assume, knowing what I know of other dereg markets where we do contracts regularly, they are very black and white and strict. So Chris, back to your previous point, there will be some sort of, if we don't hit it, we could lose opportunity in that agreement.
Yeah, and I think we can adjust that. We can adjust
Absolutely.
that we looked so far, I don't see a problem in Jayhawk, I don't see a problem in Tulip, I mean, others do, but I don't see anything that we are not gonna hit, our rates and all of those things. And the same thing here. Now, in the 15 years, we definitely will be bigger than this, right? So that's how we need to kind of load that, because the first and second phase we'll have more insight on, and the other phase is evolution over that 15 years.
You know, with as much development as going on in that region, I mean, have we engaged an Excel? I was curious, just talking to our contact. He checks in regularly with me, wondering what's going on.
Yeah, that's
Just
just
to say,
right?
yeah, Colbeck. Yeah, Steve Colbeck. And I'm just curious on, would anybody oppose? I just want to see what their plans are for redundancy of the location. I mean, just a very generic question to him. There's so much construction in that area.
Yeah.
I'm hard to believe that they wouldn't have other opportunities in the future here or plans.
Well, of course. I mean, that's the discussion too. We had, look, the door is open for, they have a new CEO, doors open for us to have that discussion. And then we bring in Demetrius along with us and the state officials along with us. So we just need to get ourselves ready. You can go ahead and ask that question, Jason, and I think we plan to get ourselves ready in the next month or so to go on.
Sounds good. I will be available.
And I think what worked well in Jayhawk was Jason and Bill take the point from a commercial discussion, right? And Jeff Thompson, and I'm certainly available to help and support. We can bring the Burns and Mac team in on the estimates. That's a supporting role for us.
Yeah.
But then on the capital side, we're the leads, right? And we're taking that in.
Yeah. So we may end up carrying that number, knowing that we don't want to spend our number.
Agreed.
We want the utility to spend that number.
And I think you
We won't
mentioned.
know that till we do the negotiation.
Correct. So what I'm recommending is that we carry that $6 million to cover electrical and natural gas
Yeah.
utility infrastructure as an item below the line that we would look to Jeff and Jason to kind of go negotiate away if possible. And then that's a DE item that we can show out of the budget. But I would advise that we protect some of those dollars.
All right, I mean,
For
we're
now.
now same agreement. Well, why don't we add Demetrius to that? The
Sure.
People that'll go.
Yeah, heck, what's Joe Biden doing these days? Come out.
No, we don't need Joe. He's a terrible negotiator.
Wow.
He's a terrible
This
negotiator.
meeting got off track.
Don't put Joe and Demetrius in the same.
So keep the questions in my mind is when should that process start? We have volumes. I think we probably need to work with Michael and the electrical team on estimates for 2 and 4, and we'll pick something for 7. But when do we, the engineering team, need to be prepped for those discussions
I
that Jason and
think
Bill
we
are doing?
can't unveil anything till mid-March, because in there, we're signaling a lot of what's going on.
Yeah, there's lots of stuff going on,
We have
right?
time.
You have time, oh, yeah, you have time. And I think surely in the next 2 years, they'll be able to put something there, right? Or if Excel is the winner, they already have part of that utility there.
Yeah, but just a reminder, I know you guys know this, but I like saying it because it's electrical, but it takes 2 years. I mean, if you remember, even in Jayhawk, even with all the notice we had there, they're still not gonna have that substation done when we start up. We're starting up on a backup system from Evergy until they can complete the commissioning of that new substation. So it's a long process where once we lay that in, we may have this building ready, and if they need to do this infrastructure, maybe waiting on electricity of some sort, or at least the full piece, right? Maybe I'll start the building, but have to wait on the process. So that's why I keep pushing, is I know it's out of mind and we don't have it, but I would say by March or April, we need to at least
Let's go for
entertain the discussion.
mid-March. Let's shoot mid-March as a reminder for us to, let's shoot for all our work between now and mid-March to get ready for those discussions.
At least we could get the answer of like, this is a no-brainer, it's a commercial discussion, or we could get a reaction from these respondents that like, this is a huge deal, we don't have this and we gotta work on it. Because if the schedule stays as you asked us to stay, right, I'm assuming we need power in early 2024. 2 years from now is early 2024, so we're kind of in that thing.
Can you list all the potential bidders for this RFP, Jason?
Yeah, we have that somewhere. I will get that to the team. I don't recall off the top of mind, but we have that.
Can you send it to me also?
Yep. Yeah, the list was actually sent from the state. We're taking their guidance and.
Yeah, good. That's even
Yeah.
better.
Yeah,
Because then we need the state to have some skin in the game also.
absolutely. And I would definitely recommend beyond our need for redundancy, what other items are like to haves we would want to include in that ask when we're working with these utilities? Are there any learnings from our other projects that we can figure out, at least asking that utility to help us absorb some of the cost on that?
How about grounding those transformers?
I didn't mean that directly, but I'm like,
No, that's what I've learned on that. It's just shocking what happens.
But another headwind or another opportunity to work through in terms of apples to apples between Jayhawk and Flavor in terms of rate is, again, based on some investigation our team from Burns has done. The voltages that are available for us to buy at are significantly different than what they are in Kansas. So if you remember the east plant in Salina is buying today at about 12,000 volts. There was an opportunity to go all the way up to 34.5, which enables a significant demand savings, right? In South Dakota, our understanding is that level right now is at 15 kV, somewhere in that probably 14.4, whatever the exact number is. But the next step up from that is 100 kV. That's not us. We're not gonna play with that. That's absolutely high voltage. That's very specialized. So my point is that I'm not sure that we're gonna get the same type of rate at that level, just everything else being equal across the country, that we were able to get in Kansas, because we're able to buy at a more appropriate level for us versus it's either 15 kV or you're a utility company buying at 100 kV. So we gotta work through those dynamics and see. So we're planning for 15 kV right now. That's what Michael and I have been talking through, and the transformer sizing and the PDCs and all that same strategy. But that's why, because there's not another option that we're aware of in the region to get up.
And we've heard that from Excel that there is no other option.
We haven't. So this is all recon work that's done in the back, because the Burns team does some of their design for their infrastructure and some of their construction. So they have kind of they know what the lines in the area looks like.
So Jason, I guess as part of the prep for RFP, here's a thought. You can mull over it. Why don't we have a formal discussion now? We don't have to disclose a lot with Excel, bringing their CEO, Demetrius, everybody together in a room and talk through it. It's a pre-RFP discussion, and we tell them, look, there'll be an RFP. You guys are our lead horse, but this is what we want from the lead horse, very clearly. And let's just put down whatever we want.
Sure.
In there and compare it to Kansas. That's what we can just say, okay, bring in some of the stuff.
Yeah, I think that'd be absolutely appropriate to bring in what
Let's
was
see
done
what
at
they
Jayhawk
got. I
and
mean,
say.
that's
how
when
can
the
you-
dancing stops, and then what will they do, right?
Yeah, my only suggestion, let's tie in Jeff, make sure, since
Oh,
the
yeah,
state's
they'll all
gonna
be
be
there. No,
influential.
everybody will be there with their coats on and their.
Yeah, what I was getting at, Tony, is we may have to entertain or engage an alternate party to make sure it looks like we're talking to everyone at the same, you know what I mean? So we may have to have a similar conversation, maybe not with all the same players, with an alternate.
Well, yeah, I'm just talking about, look, they wrote to Demetrius passed it on to me. saying, go meet with these people that John Guy brought. His CEO couldn't come because they were just getting a new CEO that
Right.
day. So this is the follow-up from that meeting. And how's that? Just a follow-up from the meeting?
Yeah.
This is where our thinking is. And we tell them there's an RFP going on. And yeah, sure, we'll have whoever else you bring to the.
Sure.
So, all right, I'm just thinking out loud here. I think that it feels like it's a good one to start the Excel discussion.
I think it at least would give you
Sooner rather than later.
if you get a second opinion, and you get a him and han of like, oh, I'm not sure about that capacity
Yeah,
or that, then I think you've got enough
Then
information
we
to
know
know.
enough exactly that that's what it is.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be good for Demetrius to hear that the rates will be different because of this. So that's.
I like asking the utilities specifically, so it's not Burns and Mac, big bad Burns and Mac in South
Yeah,
Dakota
yeah.
doing stupid
Well,
things for the
you
state.
know, and then, yeah, you got
I
it.
don't need another chink in my
But
armor on that
I
one.
also like the, here's what we got in Kansas.
There'll be a few coming.
I know, but if we could prevent a few, that'd be great.
I like, here's what we got in Kansas for Jayhawk from that
Yeah.
utility provider.
Yeah.
This is what we were expecting when we.
That's what
came
we are
to-
designing, that's what we have been
Yeah, how do
designing
you-
towards. So tell us if that's totally off and why, and why would you? Right?
So Jason, I'll set up some time probably next week. We'll find some open calendar time and we can spend an hour talking about what that would look like. Like, here's what we got from Jayhawk, listing it out both commercially and
Yeah,
technically.
let's get Jeff in there too, yeah.
And then we'll get with Jeff and we'll start working on when's an appropriate time to meet with those guys.
Well,
Perfect.
I'll check Demetrius's schedule, how's that? We look at Demetrius's schedule and say, this is when we'd like to meet you.
Yeah, just don't choose any time next week. Let Jason and I get together.
Can you send me the names of all the characters on the Excel, Jason, that we had, because my email go back that far,
Yes, I will get that for you as well.
including their new CEO. Okay, good. Actually, that's very good discussion. It's clear what we're up against, yeah. And it could be significant hurdle for us. Or we have a
It's just an
partner,
unknown that we need to
or a
protect.
partner that knocks that down, and we may have to settle for the RFP being, they might have to be the middle of the road, right? And let's see what we're settling for.
I think that meeting with them could be an opportunity for them to make that RFP a very moot point or a perfunctory exercise versus an actual.
Yeah. Look, I think they're trying to be one of the top providers in the,
Are they the top provider right now in South Dakota?
well, just this part of the world, that part of the world, right?
Right.
They don't extend beyond, well, they said they could help Texas, but they don't extend. Texas has its own problems.
I can talk all day long about oil versus dry type transformers, whatever you guys want to get into, but I think if we could go to the layout, it'd be easier to have the discussion that we're working through. So again, model is very similar to Jayhawk. We'll have a central point where we'll tie in the redundant feeds, and then we'll distribute that electricity around the building. The key thing that Michael and I are trying to work through is how do we stay out of the way of this expansion to the south, right? So there's a couple different options that we're looking at there. Right, so we can't, when you build your phase two,
Yeah.
if you remember on Jayhawk on the east side of that building, those transformers are right there because that copper is very expensive.
Yeah.
Well, we can't really do that if the plan is to expand to the south here. So we're trying to come up with a couple of different engineering solutions that enable that. So we're working it. I think we've got two really solid plans that are protected for it.
And the thought is to put the PDC over there by the utility building.
I thought the PDC was beautiful and should go right next to the employee entrance, but some of the architects said that you should
I
not do
think
that.
it's something to be proud of.
We prefer the waste.
Yeah, maybe we could use that to block the view of the waste. We can just put it over there to the other side, so, yeah. So we are trying to look at all of these things, both from an expansion
Everyone
standpoint.
would like to know what is PEC.
Oh, sure.
Our distribution center, right?
Yeah, it's basically,
It's for heat.
you can turn
Kind of like
I also do some basic. Just like.
Can I say the switch building?
Yep.
Minimum switch there.
So it's very similar in concept to the utility buildings. We take that, we don't pay for a $300 square foot building to put electrical gear in there. We build a pre-manufactured building with all the switching in it and put it off-site outside of the perimeter of the building.
So you don't wash it.
스위치가 뭐
So,
전화.
exactly, and you lock it down and you keep the wrong people out there and.
The only other slide we had is we want to make sure that we have the cost covered in the project, but then also the Schwann's IT, OT, and making sure we line that out on what is in those buckets.
Yeah, I can talk through that if you want. If you remember when we got into Jayhawk, we built the estimate up with a lot of multipliers times square footage, and then it became a little bit convoluted to track what all was in scope and where those were getting funded through. So we sat down with Michael and Scott Hungerford and Joe Sanguinetti, and we made sure that all the lessons learned from Jayhawk around where to put these dollars in the budget, that's being taken care of. And then we're calling out specific features around, I'm going to start from the bottom up, around the software that needs to be put in here. So we talked about warehouse management yesterday briefly at the ASRS. That's carried in here. We have the MES, we have SCADA. We're building in all those assumptions into this project right away. We are pulling in, I'm just going bottoms up, sorry. We're pulling in the cats and dogs, which is all of the PCs, the handhelds, all the IT stuff. We're basically using the Jayhawk model. We're taking that. Yes, we're pulling that in there, so we have a place for that. And we are including the cyber resilience. So the cyber resilience was a secondary project that was layered on to Jayhawk after we kind of agreed that it wasn't in Jayhawk, they're going to fund that. But the agreement was that those requirements would be rolled into future things like flavor or whatever else we do. So we are putting dollars.
So is that all that's needed, the 500,000, or is that shouldn't Danielle?
It's based off of what we're planning to execute in Jayhawk. I have not reached out to Danielle to ask for that number.
Can you please ask her that number?
If I say no, yes, I will. Come on, Joe, I'll do it. Joe's our new best friend.
Yeah, I think that it should be Joe. That's you.
Yeah, we'll get it.
Can we make sure that when we do our apples to oranges or whatever that comparison ends up looking like, that we call this out? It was not in our original scope at all,
Sure.
and they funded it through IT. If we fund it through here, our number will look higher.
Yeah, we have to fund it through here. It's just that
Yep.
call it out separately.
Yeah, well, so
But what I don't want to do is go in underfunded if that number is higher.
No, right. But we have to show that this is not an apples to apples anymore with respect to Jayhawk.
So what I've recommended, and I'm not sure where, maybe you know this, Kate, but we have, at this point, we're still using square footage multipliers to build up the estimate for that. But then I think on top of that, we're saying we need to call out these key line items that are incremental to that we know are there, that aren't necessarily covered in a top-down number.
So it'd be the cyber resilience and the cyber both places together, right? That you're going to separate that out.
Yeah.
The other thing, Joe, this is one for us to just talk through. I think we need to have the discussion, say by March, mid-March. That's the Dr. Cha, their
Digital officer.
That's a good way of putting it. So Joe Sanguinetti would lead that with Cho and Dr. Cha, right?
Yes, that would be the intent. And I think where you're going is that we would compare our technology stack
So
to.
this is what we're doing,
Yeah.
and that's what we're implementing in Jayhawk. This is what we're implementing in Flavor. And the reasons why we did it in Jayhawk. And that's why it is this whole best athletes. So that presentation that we put together for October ill-fated Bills Chiefs game,
Yeah, I understand. We'll do a version of that.
Yeah.
So middle of March and agenda.
Yeah, the reason I'm saying middle of March, because we don't want to answer any we don't want to take this out to Korea yet, right? That's what we don't want to talk about. Let's stay away from phase 1, 2, 3. But that whole original ask from Kathy was that we handle that discussion with them. Why not? Why not? And the coaching to Joe would be that we listen, but we won't implement that system. Right? We're all on the same page.
Yeah, so middle of March. Well, we're going to introduce him, Dr. Cha, about the improvement for JUP and RAIL.
Yeah.
We prepare that.
We give an update on Jayhawk, this is what we're doing. We're gonna take for cost purposes and resource and support that we would do the same thing there. Yeah.
Including their support.
Including what?
Their support.
No, we're not expecting anybody to support us in Jayhawk from there, right? Yeah, I don't think we want any support from them, because the moment you do that, then they bring their own stuff, right?
So,
I mean, that's why we have to be very polite.
Well, no, let's be clear, they're definitely not in Jayhawk, they've never been invited.
Yeah,
in.
but they wouldn't be in here either, because we'll use
The
the
question
same.
is, Cho, I believe they think, based on some meetings that were held previously, that they will be involved with flavor. That's what we need to manage.
Well, they wanted to install the whole system.
I know, and I think they probably still think that they are.
Well, I think there's been enough cryptic messages to them. Now we need a full-fledged. Joe, can you handle
Joe,
this?
yeah, do you-
Because the moment I get involved, then it takes that, ratchets it up a little bit too much, right?
what do you think about audience attendees?
I think it should be just Joe, Sanguinetti, and you. Kathy didn't want any part of it. And Jay Dinah should go there.
And Kitty?
And, no, she did not want to be part of it.
You can go, I'll sit with you.
Okay, just let me know what attendance.
How about you and I catch up? I think I understand, and I can
Yeah,
spend some
how about
time,
this?
and we can organize this.
And if you can, in fact, I would suggest you can coach Joe and Cho. This is where we're going. Sure. The more that we can pull away, because it ratchets up pretty high, right? That what I want to be able to say is, Demetrius, we've talked to Dr. Cha. They're not happy about it, but this is where we're going.
I got you.
And then do you want to discuss any further? Because I don't want to discuss it.
And this is important, Joe, because we're locking in some of our ROM estimates, and you can see what Chris has put. We're assuming it's a system similar to what we just did with Jayhawk. We don't have Mr. Cha in here, so.
The good news is we won't have that discussion till after the car is done and the system.
Then the budget will already be set.
Right.
Yep.
So mostly just, this is a great conversation. Glad you're here, because I would just be like, electrical.
Yeah.
But, we're trying to do some lessons learned from Jayhawk, making sure we've got that.
Yeah, I feel really good about, we took our lessons learned from Jayhawk, and we're building in structural changes to flavor that are gonna help you better.
Perfect. I mean, we learned it from Salina East to Jayhawk.
So before Jason Lewis jumps off, do we have anything to talk about on natural gas? Is that a concern? Do we need?
I think there's more questions than answers. I think we have some early negotiations on natural gas. It's very similar to the electrical story. We need to sit down with that utility.
But that's not get out, right? That's.
I don't know that, Jason. You know?
Tell us a little bit about natural gas.
To the regards that we had a set estimated volume, we went out to multipliers and requested rates. I did not personally have extensive discussions on redundancy, the type of feed sizes that we need in the location. Those are some of the things I learned from Jayhawk. We're going to have to explore that in the future, what that looks like. I would suggest we take our learnings from electricity, since that's a significantly larger expense, and then apply that. And hopefully, Tony, it can be not that we don't enjoy everyone's time, but hopefully it can be a smaller scale of staff to be able to get that executed, would be my thought.
Yeah, no, that's a great great approach. And yeah, I'm with you. Let's get the electrical piece across the line. We'll learn what the state helps and where they don't and all that
Right.
stuff.
I think in general, from an engineering standpoint, we're looking for Burns and Mac is what's the pressure, the header size that we want,
Yeah.
and the volume estimates. We need to get that. Those were key things to help unlock the negotiations with the provider. I'm sure we have that. I know Brandy just
Can we
said
write that down? Brandy just stepped out, so can you just write that down? As we're locking in the scope, it's easier for us to get more accurate information, and we haven't done that in a little bit, so it's time for us to revisit that. Okay. All right, so Jason Lewis, I don't think we need you anymore unless you're just trying to kill time.
Yeah, I'm good. Hey, you guys need anything, please call. Thanks. Yep, bye.
Okay, so we've covered everything up on the board for the most part. We wanted to go into building materials a little bit, and here comes Brandy.
So, again, we're hitting this topic because this is different than Jayhawk, and we just want you to be aware of what's going on here. It has to do with timing of being able to get construction materials plus cost inflation that we're seeing now. We would take a different approach on what we're talking about doing for labor.
Yeah, it's not different because we chose it to be, it's different because if we don't choose it to be, we have some critical things that won't be met.
Yeah, well, next. Yep, ROM and schedule. So slow walk it a little bit here. Slow walk it while I
Just give it 2 minutes.
We're gonna take a 2-minute break. What are you asking?
2 minutes? Okay.
유틸리티는
Tony, step out just for 1 second.
쓰는 거 있었어.
Okay.
좀 아까 전기 그러니까